My name is Mike Boehm. I will tell you, I am really looking forward to you knowing who I am and me getting to the business of getting to know who you are as individuals, as units, as a collective. It's one of those things that comes with the terrain, but you get used to seeing your bald head on enough images, and I'm already pretty tired about seeing my own picture plastered all over the place. So this isn't about me. This is about you, and I am so humbled and honored and really, really feel blessed to be a part of this team, the IANR team and the UNL family. And so it's with that spirit that I'm coming to you this morning. So this morning, my hope is to use this as a meet and greet so that you have a little sense of who I am and a little bit of what goes on between my two ears. And I will say right up front that I know what I think I know. I don't know what I don't know, and I know I don't know a lot. And so I make mistakes every day. I also like to think, and I kind of play this exercise on the ride in to work and on the ride home. I really believe that every day we have choices, and that every day I try to leave the world a better place, even if it's a small little place. And so I try to reset every day, and that's it. So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what I saw when I was looking at this opportunity to come to Nebraska. It is an amazing opportunity, and you'll hear me say this over and over, the mantra, the people, the place, the partnerships, and the possibilities. And that's real, and those were the four things that kept going through my head. I want to share with you a little bit about that, a little bit who I am. I want to talk about where we're at in our journey here in Nebraska. I want to talk about where we're at in our journey at the system level, Hank Bounds level, the Ronnie Green level, and I'm so excited, and that was definitely part of the attraction to be able to work with Ronnie in his new role, and now Dondi Ploman in her role as Executive Vice Chancellor. But there's some things happening at that high level, and then I want to give you some high-level updates. And you've seen this, I'm sure, but our fall edition of Growing, I'll refer to this, and we have some hard copies in the back. And then a year in review, unit leaders, the deans provided some input to our office, and we were able to pull some high-level success stories and highlights. By no stretch of the imagination is it a comprehensive look at all of the amazing stuff that goes on here, but it is a high level. I want to talk a little bit about some of the neat partnerships that I see and what I've been exposed to. I should say that I'm not counting. I hope to be here a very long time, but this is formally day 11 on the job, okay? So cut me some slack is read between the lines. And I want to talk about the people, and I want to talk about the place. And the goal here is we've tightened this down a little. I think these typically have been about 2 hours. I went to an hour and a half, and my goal is to be done no later than 45 minutes into it, and then I really want some interaction with you. We are talking about our See You, See Me technology and the opportunities to actually see who we're talking to around the state, whether it's Ron at NCTA and Curtis, or Panhandle Research and Extension Center, or West Central, or ARDC. I know we get Zoom, and I know this is a huge state. People have told me it's a big, small state. Everybody seems to know each other, but it is a big state, no question about it. And I'm a firm believer that if we're spending our time driving back and forth in meetings, that's probably not the most efficient use of our time, but there is no substitute for seeing each other and experiencing the human condition together. So with that, just a quick slide on who I am a little bit. I think you've probably heard parts and pieces, but over on the left-hand side there is my wife, Connie. Connie, we've been married going on 27 years. We've known each other about 34. Connie grew up in Indiana on a small grain livestock farm, so that was terrific. I remember being introduced to her dad, huge hands, big, tall farmer. shaking my hand is about 3 times as big, and all he looked at me is, Ohio State, huh? I'm like, oh, goodness gracious. And the undercurrent was, why not Purdue? And so we agreed that the land-grant system was critical, and our tripartite mission was critical, and after that, it all worked out pretty well. Connie works at Ohio State still. She'll be joining me in May. She's the director of Ohio State's Student Wellness Center, and really thinks about how do you, the 9 dimensions of wellness. I think we use a model here of 7 dimensions of wellness, but she'll be joining me in May. So a little bit of a time gap there. That's a picture that we took when we came. Some of you have heard the story. I had a terrific interview, and some of you were involved with that in Omaha. I came here quietly the day before because I'd not been to Lincoln, and I thought that was critical. And I'd not been to Omaha to the UNMC campus, so I spent some time just quietly under the radar, nobody paying attention, getting a chance to figure things out. I had such an amazing airport experience with the folks that I called my wife that night and said, I think we need to come out and visit. So didn't have a lot of time, didn't know I was going to get a campus interview, but we found out quickly that there was a campus interview. And then we came out while you all were beating up on Oregon, serving duck in Memorial. And so we quietly had the run of Lincoln. And the middle picture there is our 2 kids. I call them kids. Our son's 23, he's finishing a graduate program at Xavier. And our daughter's 22, she's finishing up at Ohio State in special ed. Whether they join mom and dad, we have given them the forwarding address. So we hope they join us because we're a very close-knit unit of 4. But at the least, they'll be here. We've got them both out here. They thought both Lincoln and Omaha were hip places for young people. So, and they love the people and they love the place. So. We hope they come. But those are our kids. You can see we're a companion pet friendly. We have 3 cats and 2 dogs. Maybe they multiplied in the last 2 weeks. So that's it. That's our connection. As far as my scholarly work, I am a plant pathologist by training. I think Haley did a nice job of putting an interview piece together. While I'm a plant pathologist, you just need to know that I'm inherently a very curious person, and I love to learn. I'm an integrated systems thinker, and that's the way I see the world. I'm a lumper taxonomically, not a splitter, and I believe in the collective power of a community. And so that's just some philosophy there. As far as my research, I've worked on, over the last 32 years, I've worked on everything from seed potato production to nursery and greenhouse crops. The last 21 years, I've had a focus on integrated management of a terrible disease of wheat called Fusarium head blight, commonly known as scab, and that's an issue here in Nebraska, but also turf grass. And I'm glad I had the wheat because, nobody eats turf, and when they do rock, they throw up. So those darn endophytes. So that's where I've spent my scholarly time. I am passionate about teaching and learning, all levels, graduate, professional, undergraduate. I do a lot of undergraduate teaching, and the last 7 years at Ohio State, I've been in central administration as a vice provost, but I continued to teach and continued to publish and push patents out the door. The class that I've been teaching the last 7 years, and actually the last 11, is one on bioterrorism and biosecurity. So another part of me that's important to know is I'm a retired Army reservist, Naval reservist. I spent almost 21 years in uniform, and my job in the Navy for the last 11 years of my career was a bioweapons testing specialist. That's what I tell people. I lost my hair doing that, but I think we all know that's not the case. So I taught a course up until just last spring, and I hope to reinvigorate that, a course on biosecurity, bioterrorism, which is a real threat around the globe. So enough about me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about that. So 6 months ago, I will be honest with you, 8 months ago, coming to Nebraska was not on my radar. It really wasn't. When the opportunity was made known to me, I began doing my due diligence. And it was fascinating just the website, the Nebraska Nice website, which is where I used a lot. It was really neat, and I tried to put a collage together, and please don't gig me on the species I show, because I've learned that's very important here in Nebraska. But kind of from the west over to the east, what this doesn't do justice is the 4,000-foot slope. I've learned if we bike ride in Nebraska, you start over by Wyoming and come towards the river, in the river valley. But the pictures don't do it justice. And so when I was doing my interview, I said, probably naively, maybe it was a mistake, but I don't think so, I absolutely want to get to all 93 counties in Nebraska. I want to visit all 93 counties in Nebraska and stop and talk to folks and see things. So this yellow, that's kind of hard to see, not too bad up on the big screen, that's where I've been in Nebraska. So I've been to 22 counties thus far, and I could say, in fairness, I've visited 7 of those counties. So I have a long way to go, but my goal is to visit all 93 in this first year. And this was only possible because of the gracious goodwill of the INR leadership team. They took some time with me in December, and that first week of December, and Ron, Archie, Jill, Chuck Hibbard, Steve was busy with students at that time and getting ready for almost our 24,000th graduation. But they helped me get on this blitz, and so we went to Grand Island. I'd been so impressed with the story of the moving, and I know it was tension-laden, but the movement of the fairgrounds over to Grand Island and the Raising Nebraska, boy, how special. You don't get to recreate an interactive fairgrounds for the citizens. We have a science center in Columbus called COSI, and for me, Raising Nebraska was like COSI on steroids for ag and natural resources and community human development. Then we went to West Central, so Kelly introduced us to the staff there, and we had a chance to take a look at the Regional Extension and Research Center. I will say, I'll sprinkle my comments with some of the, I think, really unique qualities of the state. The Institute of Ag and Natural Resources is a very unique model across the United States. It's a special place, and the momentum, and I'll talk about that, and the innovation and the collaboration and the partnership is really palpable, and it's only on one trajectory, and that's due to the good work of the 2,000 women and men who call this institute home as far as their workplace. But it is really special. Another special quality is the blending of our extension and research centers together. Many states have separate field research stations and separate extension outposts. The blending of the research and the extension mission and the blending of our staff and our faculty across the state is really a smart call, and it was a very attractive aspect. And our visit at West Central, if that holds out with the Panhandle and the Eastern Regional District or Center, which I assume it will, that's really pretty special. NCTA was a really special event and that doesn't report to IANR. Ron Rosati's the dean. It reports to the vice president of Ag and Natural Resources as part of the Nebraska University system. But I really think, again, back to the lumping and the splitting, that lumping, I view things as gradients, as spectra. And I think about higher education, and I think about Nebraska. And Annie E. Casey every year puts out a scorecard of all 50 states as how we treat our kids. Nebraska consistently is in the top quartile of how we treat our youth. And that's not a mistake. It's the programming that goes on in the Nebraska system, but it's also from public education, P through 12, but extending that pre-K all the way to 16 and beyond. And I think you pay special attention here about critical pivot points of Nebraska's youth, and you seem to work collaboratively, and NCTA is a critical component of that ecosystem, as is UNL, as is the Nebraska system, as are the community colleges and public education. And I'm excited to work with you on that. Got to see Lake McConaughey. That was pretty cool. It was -2 when we left North Platte. I thought that was cold until I saw -11 over in Sydney, and I'm like, what do I have, Scotts Bluff? Nothing to worry about. But it was magical, it was mystical, with the steam rising off this 22-mile lake or reservoir as we crossed that causeway, the hydroelectric power, and then we come out of the mist and there are the sandhills. And to see them for the first time, for all of you who've experienced that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was pretty mystical. I was a bit surprised that we only saw one vehicle between Lake McConaughey and where we stopped for gas 75 miles to the west of Whitman. That was pretty impressive. And then we had a chance to go to Goodmanson Ranch. I know something about agriculture, but it's like relearning because the systems are just so different here. And the appreciation, 25 acres per cow for grazing, given the sparseness of the grassland. But to see the expanse of Goodmanson was just crazy. And I don't think Montana has anything on big sky country because there's big sky in Nebraska and it's blue, which is heavenly for this person who has spent a lot of time in Ohio where it's gray. 3 words, I mentioned them to you: momentum, innovation, and collaboration. Momentum, innovation, and collaboration. I tried to boil this down. Those words are just dripping with opportunity and just fascinating. And you should take great credit, absolutely, that you are what's driving this. And while we're on this subject, again, just a little bit of philosophy about leadership. I think we all see it. I'm a faculty member first. I was a department head, chair, and then vice provost, and now vice chancellor, vice president. Most organizational charts put the leader at the top, and while that's fine, and then you've got the deans, and then you've got the department heads, and then you have the faculty, staff, and students. Would you just do me a favor operationally? Flip the pyramid and make it a diamond, and at the top of that is the faculty, the staff, and the students. We exist, those of us in leadership roles at the university, in the academy, exist to facilitate the good work of you, our faculty, staff, and the students who aren't in this room. That's what we do. Our job is to facilitate forward progress. It's not to roll over and give you everything. I wish we could, but the truth is, our job is to facilitate your good work. And know that I'm coming in this with that philosophy, that I'm here working for you. And maybe that sounds like lip service, but I don't think so, given what I've seen of the leadership team. And I do want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the deans that we have here, and good things just don't happen. The people are amazing. The work ethic in Nebraska is very similar to the work ethic that I grew up. First generation college student, grew up in a blue collar town. Our parents worked in the steel mills, the auto industry, or the shipyards. That was it. And I was lucky and fortunate to be a first generation college student, and it's been an amazing, blessed ride. It doesn't happen without that values-driven work ethic, and I find a lot of similarities from my hometown with the people that I've met here. Leadership is important, and in particular, just as I'm tired of seeing my mugshot and it's only been 11 days, I want to give a round of applause to the deans and the leadership team at IANR. It has been a pretty wild ride as far as the Institute, with Ronnie being double-hatted, and now Ronnie then becoming our chancellor. And so if we could just give a round of applause for that leadership team. And I know he's even more wired not to be publicly acknowledged, but Ron, would you just stand? Ron Yoder, please. Yeah. I'm impressed with the entire leadership team, but I want to say thanks to Ron in this transition for helping me understand IANR. We've had lots of conversations. Philosophically, I think we're very similar in what we think is important, and that servant leader. You've got a great example. I'm very pleased, too, that Ron has agreed to do the experiment with me to stay on and continue to serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor. I think it's critical. I told Ron this when I first met him. To a person, this community has basically paraphrased, you'd be absolutely insane and crazy not to have Ron be a partner with you. And that's the way we're viewing this, as a partnership. And the experiment part is I'm learning what this job is, and together we'll figure that out. But know that I'm excited, and I think the course that's been charted here is just, again, the momentum. The buzz is real. Steve Waller shared with me. The buzz is you, the buzz is us now, and I'm proud to be a part of that. So pivoting a little bit into the next kind of phase. You've heard Ronnie Green. Ronnie's got big, audacious, hairy goals. That's real. I think the truth of the matter is he is a believer in thinking strategically, and so am I. For the last 7 years in my previous role, I was responsible for helping, not being responsible, but helping facilitate a thought process that was not about the plan. I'm not a big proponent of strategic planning for the sake of a plan that ends up in a 3-ring binder on a shelf somewhere. But I am absolutely a believer in developing a common shared vision. So for me, strategic planning, could be pretty rough, but when you hear me say it, when you hear the leadership team say it, the bottom line is it's about where we've been, it's about where we are today, and collectively it's about where we think we need to go in service to the teaching and learning mission, the discovery, innovation, creative works agenda, and then what it means to be an engaged university through our engagement. Always with the litmus test, are we helping people succeed? Our faculty, our staff, our students, and the communities here in Nebraska and in the global community. So that's what this is about. And I think that's what it is about for Ronnie. So to move along a little bit, Ronnie's thrown 8 big goals, targets. He's called them multiple things as you listen. I think they're directional beacons that we need to be paying attention to. On Halloween, he kicked off at his first all-hands meeting of the university's leadership team. He announced that we would have 4 working groups, Tiger teams. You'll hear me throw in some military jargon along the way, so I'm learning lots of acronyms, so I'll throw some back at you. But teams that are really focused on, in my mind, 4 critical areas. The first 4, we have task forces, and we have members of our community engaged with those task forces. One around achieving distinction, which I've said publicly. There is so much that Nebraska and the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, but the system at Lincoln is already distinguished. Ronnie's talked about being a distinguished Big Ten university, being a distinguished land-grant university. As far as I'm concerned, watch out the rest of the Big Ten, watch out the rest of higher education. We're doing things here, you're doing things that are already so distinctive and cutting edge and innovative. And the cool part of this is, the big, small state, you know each other, you talk with each other, you have the work ethic that's values-driven, and so I think that momentum is real and we'll keep it going. Budget models are important. I'd say we have at Nebraska a more historical budget model based on legacy funding. There's this thing called responsibility-centered budgeting or responsibility-centered management. These RCM models are rampant in higher education. My previous institution, Ohio State, adopted this model almost 10 years ago now. They're great so long as you have an infusion of new resources, because you can then distribute new resources on things that are strategic, that make sense, that are in alignment with our common shared vision. They're awful models to have when we're in budget tight times, because then they're not investments, it's basically across the board cuts, and that's not strategic. And so I'm not a fan of just flat appropriations, historical models. I'm a big fan, as a community of practice, coming together, having very sometimes exciting, sometimes very tension-laden conversations about what's important, where we have investments to be made, making a decision, reaching practical consensus, not unanimity, but practical consensus. And then once we get that common shared vision, moving forward as a community towards mutually agreed upon goals, and then holding each other accountable. Not in a nasty way, not in a top-down or a parochial way, but being very honest with each other. And that honesty and that candor, which I've experienced here already, again, seems to be, and the transparency piece seems to be very much Nebraska. Smart enrollment growth from undergraduate enrollment. You all know the story of Kasner, 12 years straight in a row of increased enrollment. NCTA has had last several years of enrollment growth. That's terrific. But I'm thinking about undergraduate programming, professional and graduate programming, and you've heard Ronnie, one of his big audacious goals is to increase graduate enrollments. I want to talk about that. Student matriculation and success, Kasner, huge success in that space. The College of Education and Human Sciences, great partner, also successes. This last one, though, it's not quote unquote a task force. The university has engaged a group called Halawani and Associates. Rona Halawani is a professor out of San Jose, California. And for the last 4 years, she's been running a firm that does diversity mapping. And I'm here to say, diversity and inclusion writ large, when you hear me talk about it, it's everything. It's race, it's ethnicity, it's gender, sexual orientation, disciplinary, it's the whole bit. And I'm excited and know that that was a positive attribute of Nebraska, the commitment of Hank Bounds and Ronnie to move diversity and inclusion conversation mainstreamed. And I'll talk more about this. I think it's absolutely critical. Diversity, a collection of difference, but for me it's the inclusive aspect that really animates that difference. And to be candid with you, at the end of the day, it's not difference for difference sake. It is to bring the difference together, animate that difference, such that we can more smartly, more positively engage the people we're helping succeed and the communities we're helping succeed. And if we don't look like and we don't represent that difference and the different perspectives, it makes it more difficult for us to be impactful. And that's the bottom line for me. Legislative update, you're Nebraskans, I'm Nebraskan all of 3 weeks. My sense is that there are things happening in the unicameral and politics in Nebraska that are just as new for you as they are for me. And I think that's important for me to know and for us all to appreciate. Lots of seats were up. We have 17 new senators that were elected. I think too, reading the paper and watching the news, they're trying to get to know each other. But this is an interesting dynamic that we can talk to offline over lunch. The budget setting situation, we have two aspects to the budget, and I don't want to spend a lot of time, but if there are questions, I'm happy to share my 2 cents and then lean on the leadership team, Jill Brown and her understanding. 2 pieces of the budget. One is that as agriculture goes in the state of Nebraska, so too does the state budget. And so the last 3 years, we've had record farm gate commodity pricings almost to $8 billion. It dropped down, it went back up to the high 7s. We're somewhere now around 4.2. I think back to the trends and understanding the spectrum, I sat down with one of our ag economists for a tutorial looking back over the last 20 years. 10 years ago we were at 1.2. So if you take a long view, 1.2 to 4.2 seems like an amazing jump. The issue was that we had record high commodity prices, and that drew lots of things into the mix. I talked with a rancher the other day, told me basically property taxes, which was on everybody's mind, are roughly 10% of the cost to operate. Valuation of farmland. And so the hot issues that the 50,000 ranchers and farmers are wrestling with, they're very real, and we're seeing this work its way out. I think other big issues, no different than Ohio in some ways, the amount we spend on prisons versus and Medicaid compared to higher education or public education. And when you look at those trends over time, in 1980, I think is the right fact check, we were about 21% of the state budget was higher education. We're down to 13.3% today. In Ohio, we're at 6%. And you move into New England, into Delaware, and their chancellors talk about state-located institutions of higher learning, not even state-supported. So there are other parts of the country that are in deeper challenges than we are. But that is to say that there's lots of stuff going on that's very complex, and lots of people who are trying to help figure out what that is. So the two budget issues that we have, one, we have an FY17 rescission, and for us, that's 2.3% in higher education. That equilibrates to about $13 million that President Bounds has to figure out. If there is any good news in that, it's a cash. We have to pay the state back, but it's cash. It's not a cut to our permanent base. The other piece of good news, if I've been following since November, is I've heard numbers as high as 4%. So to end up at 2.3% seems pretty good, but there's a lot of detail around that because there are other programs that are being talked about. So just surface-wise, 2.3 cash is better than 4% permanent. To get that cash, what I've come to understand as far as our budget in the higher ed system, about half of the revenues generated from UNL, and about a third of that revenue is generated, and our budget is at the Institute. So if $13 million is the higher ed cut, about half of that, $6.5 million, will float to the Chancellor, Chancellor Green, and about a third of that, roughly $2 million for planning purposes, will come to the Institute. To generate the cash without impacting the units' operating budgets, because you've got very savvy leaders as far as trying to take that permanent funding and generate operating dollars and refill positions. The two approaches, Ronnie would like to find half of that cash in operating efficiencies and cash reserves. The other half is cash generated from what has now become known as the hiring freeze. And the hiring freeze, it's funny too, a joke, it's not a joke, haha, it's funny how all this blew up after I signed my letter of offer. I will just tell you, sitting in Ohio at the November 17th Board of Regents meeting, I was just, my wife's like, because it was very public at that point, she's like, "Are you going to get approved by the Board of Regents?" And I'm like, "I sure hope so." So I'd say it's a phase. It's where the good news is we've had amazing opportunities to be very strategic at filling positions within the Institute. And all things, people are the magic. Places don't make impacts. People make impacts, right? The 2,000 of us make the impact, and we all have a role to play. So people, that's the magic, that's the most critical piece of resource that we have. It's not the budget, it's not our buildings, it's the people. So what has happened was a series of very fluid, how do we identify the most critical positions, how do we fill those most critical positions, but how do we also pause hiring or delay hiring to generate cash that then can be used to help offset this payment. So that's what's happening, and just yesterday President Bounds was in front of the Unicameral Legislative Appropriations Committee making the case for higher education and the investment in higher education, and you know just as much as I do about that. I think looking forward then, the second big piece, and the piece that we're really attentive to, is the FY 18-19 biennial budget of the state of Nebraska. I think the common thinking is that 2.3% cash rescission will become a permanent cut at that point. So right now we're thinking about how do we generate cash. Come summer, we'll have a different challenge, and that is how do we actually take a reduction in our permanent operating budget, and what does that look like? And you've already heard me say I'm not a believer in flat cuts. I'm a believer in we as a community to figure out where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go, what investments are necessary to allow us to maximize the success of our people. That will be the guiding principle to reach a consensus as to where we invest. What I've learned about Nebraska thus far, and UNL in particular, and IANR, and it perhaps is best manifested most visually manifested tangibly in the physical environment when you take a look at the buildings. IANR, the East Campus, has had a significant investment in capital investment, and we'll talk a little later about some other projects. We've had our window of opportunity, and now we're seeing a pivot to the city campus. What I'm finding is there's a willingness, so long as there's transparency and a common shared vision, that people are willing, for the good of another part of the organization, to take their turn or wait their time. And I think that's another really important, tangible aspect of the culture here. So, big date, February 27th, that's when President Bounds will be in front of the Appropriations Committee to talk about the 18-19 budget. As part of our response to this, the good news is that Ronnie and Dondi Plomin and Mike Boehm are all new, and we have to get out and get to know the state. And so as part of our engagement strategy, we in the Institute know this. This is about thinking globally, but acting locally. And so the trench that we really need to make sure that we have the support of is in our local communities. And so between now and February 27th, Ronnie, Dondi, and I will be spending a lot of time out around the state, having conversations with our constituents, and then banking on the fact that those constituents' voices will resonate back to their senators, back to the Appropriations Committee. We will also be doing the normal dance with the unicameral here in Lincoln. President Bounds, some of you, many of you, I'm guessing, have seen this. He's put out some talking points. I think they're great talking points. Huge impact higher education has on the economy of the state. I love the second bullet, a 6-to-1 return. Who wouldn't put their money in an investment on the open market? 1 out of every 36 jobs connected to the university. And then that last bit is really about partnering with our local communities, all 93 counties, and we do that in our tripartite mission areas. So those are important. President Bounds is going out to all of the 4 universities. Ron, he's rolled NCTA's linkage in with UNL. So he is coming to the Lincoln campus on the 31st. He's got 2 sessions, one with staff and one with faculty. And he wants to hear from you. He wants to hear the good, he wants to hear the bad, the ugly, and I know you'll do it in a constructive format. So he's coming streaming. This will be live streamed with that 45-second delay, but he'll be coming over to the Nebraska Union on the 31st. So if you have time, please engage President Bounds and be candid and constructive. He needs your input. As far as unit updates, and I'll preface this by saying this is, again, not a comprehensive overview. Please take a look at this document, and I believe we've already posted this to the IANR website, and then you know more about growing than I do, but take a look there. In no particular order, just a couple of slides. I talked about NCTA already as far as enrollment growth. I absolutely think in Nebraska that NCTA plays a critical role in that gradient of education and higher education, no question about it. The programming, we spent a good almost 4 hours there. It was fantastic. I met the person who's going to teach me how to ride a horse. Everybody who knows me said I need a horse where my feet touch. I think it's called a pony, where my feet don't leave the ground. But I will tell you, it was just terrific to visit with the faculty, staff, and students at NCTA. I've talked with Ron about this. I don't know what I don't know, and I know enough to be dangerous. I think the changing demographics, and I'll just pick out one, and that's if you take a look at the census data for Nebraska. In 1980, roughly 6% of Nebraska were people of color. Today, it's 21% in 2010 census. Our demographics are changing in Nebraska. When I talk about this aspect, I talk about the national picture. In 2011, everybody loves babies. In 2011, nothing's threatening here. Half of the babies in America were people of color, and half of the babies were white. So we've already begun the shift. In 2044, half of America will be white and half will be people of color. So if we go back to the babies in 2011, if that's when the babies are, in 18 years there are students. That's the next generation of farmers and ranchers and innovators. So I think the question I always ask is, in a non-threatening way, I think we ask the question, who's missing? And what are we doing? And what does that look like? And really put some focus. I actually think NCTA, especially with our Latino population, Latino, I'm using for Latina, Hispanic, but Latino population, huge increase in the state, 17% over that 30-year swing, many of whom are first-generation folks coming here associated with the meat processing facilities. And I think there are lessons to learn from the first wave of Latino immigration in Scottsbluff, for example. I know there are some of you who are actually studying that. Lots of neat lessons learned there. Ron, I put this in there. This was the picture that you sent. Can you help me out? Did you sent this picture because it was a cool picture, or you sent this picture because they are award-winning? Wasn't sure. Both of those. Okay. Well, these are people who know how to ride horses. Kasner, you've heard the story of Kasner. What a real bright spot at UNL, no question about it. When we take 12 years of consecutive growth, that just didn't happen. Kasner is a place that students come first, and I think that's important. If you take a look at our retention rate, which is part of Ronnie's goals for the university, increasing that retention rate. I'm a firm believer we work so hard to recruit, but then we have to recruit every day. That's called retention. Our graduation rate is fantastic, room for improvement, but I think it's this last bullet, and that's really the placement rate for our students. At Kasner, we have the highest placement rate. Also, I'm learning about CEHS, and Marjorie's helping me, and the department heads are helping me on that front. But we have 2,400 students. EHS has 3,000 students. Our reach is 5,000 plus students. And we do a lot, and there's a lot to be proud here. But it is about the success of our students that's most critical. I think two things I'd like to share with you. One, just could have highlighted a lot, but one is our program with Rwanda. We started this program with 7 students, a small cohort. This is a really compelling story, and I have friends who are sociologists who work on the Rwandan genocide, and now those same genocide scholars are working at how do the communities come back and deal with this 20 years after the fact. We have 50 plus students from Rwanda that are part of this amazing program, and there's a quote from one of our second cohort students. I mean, we are changing lives, not only here in Nebraska and across the nation, but globally. And another neat program is a 3+1 program. I threw this in so that, again, that global engagement, really neat program with our Department of Food Science and Technology, where we are partnering with a partner institution in China and working with them to provide the first 2 years of the curriculum, our curriculum. Third year, we have folks there teaching it, and then the fourth year they come here. And for the graduates of this program, they graduate with dual degrees. And as we think about the impact and the footprint on the global stage, very, very important. Our graduate programming, I mentioned to you that this is a focus of Ronnie's. It's a focus of the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources. I think we do another distinctive characteristic of IANR and UNL is that we absolutely do systems and integrated systems amazingly well. And this PhD program in complex biosystems is an example, but other new opportunities are listed there as well. Pretty important. One of the things that I think is critically important is just not increasing numbers, but it's really thinking about what does graduate education mean in the 21st century. It isn't what it looked like 30 years ago when I was in graduate school. Our partnerships with industries and NGOs and foundation and government is really critical. And it changes our culture. And my sense is here at UNL and within the Institute, there's, of course, a normal distribution. I'd like to think it's skewed over on this side. But there's a normal distribution of cultures that look at this opportunity, look at these challenges. What does it mean to have a responsive curriculum? What does it mean for job placement in the 21st century? And there's a lot of good work at the national level on pathways related to graduate education. So this isn't just a numbers game for us. And I'm not suggesting that it was for you before I showed up 11 days ago. But we really have to look at this holistically, again, with success of our students in mind, and ultimately, short term, the long term, the success and the vitality of Nebraska's economy and our communities. Really important. On the research front, just quickly, UNL and UNMC have seen record increases in expenditures and research expenditures, and this is highlighted. The ARD team did a nice job of providing some of these highlights in that update. But just those last two columns, if you take a look at the increase from the last 4 years, $40,000 increase in total research expenditures, and then expenditures per FTE. Back to my point, places don't make differences, people make differences. So the leadership team, in working with the department heads, center directors, thinking with the faculty about what the needs are in our tripartite mission areas, selectively, strategically making investments with that common shared vision, has brought amazing new people that have shored up existing excellence and foci within the Institute, and it's been pretty fantastic. And it's not by coincidence then as a tangible outcome you see these types of shifts. I will say we have huge challenges. Those of you who are tenure track faculty who pivoting from a culture of NIH, NSF, USDA funding, I think it's lousy that you still have a solid A and we don't get funded. 93% failure rate, 7% success rates. Something's got to adjust. And going back to the previous slide, our partnerships, especially partnerships with industry, in a way that upholds the academic standards that we know are critical, that has to be a win-win in there. And I think Nebraska has some amazing opportunities, and you're doing some amazing things. I'm a plant scientist, so I couldn't resist as I looked around, just fantastic investment in phenomics and actually connecting phenomics to our amazing breeding programs, both plant but also animal, linked back to the amazing work that we do at the National Drought Mitigation Center, the Nebraska Water Center, the Water for Food, Doherty Water for Food Institute. There is a neat, unique, distinctive constellation, if you will, of efforts that when bundled together are second to none in the world. And that goes all the way then to Nebraska being the driver in center pivot technology and water management and so forth. So neat example. A new shift from the last time Ron provided this update, and that's the genesis of the Nebraska Food for Health Institute. I think boiled down, you are what you eat, we are what you eat. We all know that from our head to our feet. We probably sing the song. This group and this effort led by Andy Benson is really taking a look at the gut microbiome, looking at the food that we ingest, looking at the metabolomics, looking at the microbial biome of the gut, of the oral cavity, and then linking this back ultimately to really important things like brain function, cognition, its impact on learning, nutrition, and how it impacts learning, but also health, heart health, diabetes, obesity, and that ties nicely very much into some of our programs around our communities, whether they're youth or adults. Big picture, this goes all the way back to production agriculture, animal and plants, the genetics, the nutritional value of the crops we grow, the sustainable production and processing, but it also gets in post-harvest processing, gets into the human condition. Animals and humans don't want to eat things that don't taste good and smell good and aren't attractive. So there's so much on this spectrum that the Institute does well. So while the initial center pivot, I guess there's a play on words, the center focus is tightly looking at what's going on in our gut. Truth of the matter is this is much broader, and this is in part why the Institute has put a premium on food for health. We are so fortunate here at Nebraska and the investment that the citizens of Nebraska have made in the Innovation Campus. There's nothing. I mean, you can go to Research Triangle in North Carolina, and they have a Centennial campus, which is very focused on engineering. Our partnerships out there at the Innovation Campus and the partnerships and the leadership of Dan Duncan in that space and Ann just are incredible. But it's also very much linked to Ryan Anderson in our industry liaison office, and also Brad Roth in our technology commercialization office. And this is directly then tied to Ronnie Green's idea of taking the ORED Vice Chancellor position and separating out the Vice Chancellor for Research from a new position around Vice Chancellor for Economic Development. Theo and Angela and Ron and I were in a meeting just yesterday with ConAgra, and there are some amazing things that are happening with those partnerships. This list continues to grow, but my point here is partnerships. Another really close to home partnership that some of you are involved in, again, I said we do an incredibly positive job with systems, integrated systems. I had the good fortune just to spend a little 45 minutes with our integrated beef systems team. They met upstairs in the Arbor Room just last week. I think it was last week. Fantastic. This is an integrated system, Martin, from grasslands and grazing practices to beef production and back into the health, the food for health connected. One of the neat things here, again, how we leverage $1.5 million across the Institute has been identified through ARD, Extension, Kasner, and our partners. And the team right now that you see here is working on amazing ideas of what is that common vision for moving forward. I had the good fortune of kicking off the inaugural, this was a fun group, inaugural Hops Growers and Brewers conference that was over at the Nebraska Innovation Center. It was just really neat to see hops growers and brewers and microbrewers and industry partners. We had people from all over the U.S. It was fantastic. There's been a permanent investment now in fermentation distillery over on the Nick, which is pretty cool. But that was a fun group. This was my first welcome to campus meeting, so I'll remember that for a while. Other examples of partnerships, many of these partnerships aren't just research or extension or Kasner. It's a bundle of what the Institute does well. But this is an amazing partnership, and Ron and Josh and the governor spent time at a high tech demonstration zone in Yangling, China, that takes the best of what Nebraska has to offer in this space and actually showcases it in a growing economy. Engaging Youth is another great example, and this picture came out of our Growing magazine, and it's really tied to the wearable technology. I chose, rather than to dive deep into programming, to take this bit because I think it's critical, it's our future, and that's engaging youth. Just absolute amazing stuff that's going on in this space. Brad spoke to the Agriculture Builders of Nebraska at their annual conference last week, and it was just terrific. Back to that 4-H and back to the state budget, I know in Ohio we had the same kind of issue where more money was being spent on prisons than higher education or public education. And my friends who are judges, not that I have a lot of friends who are judges, but I would always ask them, how many 4-Hers have you seen in your court? Not many. And so I think we know what the solutions are when it comes to engaging. And in Nebraska, it's 1 out of every 3 youth are engaged in 4-H, which is amazing. The hard part is, how do we kind of bring the ship to a stop enough to evaluate and then reset what we're doing with prisons such that we could then take that resource and move it into areas that everyone, I think, believes are important. This is a nice example, and this too was highlighted. Again, shows just a tiny little piece of our partnership with CEHS. But the Department of Textiles and Merchandising and Fashion Design, that is a long name for me, did something really neat. They took the winners from various competitions at the state fair, and then they had the 4-Hers projects actually put in an installation at the Hillstead Textiles Gallery, which was really cool. And then when we think about engaging youth, I don't know, again, what I don't know, but we had Mark Peschel here last week. Mark is really a pretty amazing person. He provides leadership for national CEO of the FFA organization, and he was on campus, on the Lincoln campus, engaged lots of faculty, staff, and students. Gave a great Huerman lecture last week, which was really well attended. But the Engler Entrepreneur Program, and then what we're doing with the Rural Futures Institute, with our internship program. I had the good fortune of visiting with Chuck and Connie last week. There's amazing stuff going on that this institute nurtures, and so a lot of neat stuff in that space. New people, I mentioned this to you, we've had a lot of new faces. Here are the faces of our new tenure track faculty that have joined us since last August. We have 2 pictures we're trying to chase down there. But a picture's worth 1,000 words. I want to welcome you. You've been here longer than me, but it is a special opportunity to bring new faces to augment the existing excellence that we have, and that is that, as we're finding this year, isn't to be taken lightly. So welcome to our new faculty. We've got some changes coming up. Dave Varner, who's not a new face, but he's got a new role as the Associate Dean of Nebraska Extension, and Clint Kriebel, who's come in as our new department head in animal sciences. So welcome and congratulations. We have 2 really significant leadership shifts. First, Steve Waller last fall announced that he will be transitioning out of his role as our Kasner Dean. Steve, would you mind standing up, please? We'll be saying a lot about Steve as we go on here. And then Rock Guasson, help me? Gossois. Thank you. It's funny, I've known both Steve and Rock professionally, but from afar, and Rock's leadership in the department has just been incredible. With these pivots, gives us a chance to come back and think hard about the opportunity to bring new colleagues into the mix. And remember that conversation on inclusive excellence, equity, and diversity and inclusion. That's going to be a critical part. And not to cheapen this. It's not diversity for diversity's sake, just again, so you hear me say this over and over. We go for the best people, but it's our responsibility to go for the most diverse pool that brings that diversity to our community. And we have an opportunity to do that in 2 critical leadership positions. Other changes, extension, you know more about this, but it's the east side of the state, so from the Panhandle to the West Central has been organizationally, structurally pretty constant for a while, but this has been then the shift over on the Eastern District, Eastern Research and Extension Center. And so Don Adams has been providing leadership there, and we've hired 3 new folks to cover the Northeast, the Metro, and the Southeast region. This is new structure for us, put in play last fall, and it continues to be evolving. And I look forward to get to know more about this. Very close here to the Lincoln campus. Wow, part of my job in the Navy was diagnosis and detection of zoonotic, high-consequence human and animal pathogens. That's what we did. The Diagnostic Center is absolutely an incredible investment in our capability. Still on time, on target, on budget, and I look forward to the opening of that facility late spring, early summer. Just amazing. And then our East Campus residence halls, I think, right over there, I think, as the crow flies. Just a spectacular opportunity. You'll hear me use the word residence halls. They're not dorms. Residence halls, active learning takes place, an extension of what goes on in our classroom. So this is incredible, absolutely. East Campus Union, this is an effort that's been going on for a while. I think just for sake of brevity, the conversation continues with the East Campus Union. We have a couple of options. There are some. One is to invest in the building that we're in right now, and it needs some, it's got some deferred maintenance issues. Structurally, perhaps just fine, but it's got some deferred maintenance, significant, millions of dollars. So the question is, do we invest that money in this building, or do we tear it down, essentially, and build a new building? This has to fit within the larger context of the conversations you've all been having, those of you who live on this campus, about our commons, our academic commons, and creating a sense of excitement here. So that conversation is going. Ron Yoder is intimately involved in providing leadership on that dialogue. Ronnie's serious about moving it forward. I think buildings are buildings. What's most important are the people and the programs in those buildings. So as one of the things I will put out there to you is think about the programmatic adjacencies that make sense in that new space. Our East Campus Academic Commons, the C.Y. Thompson Library renovation, this is a $22 million project. We got a $10 million grant. It's an in-kind grant. We have a $5 million gift against that. We're actively working at securing the other $7 million. And this is, as far as capital projects, the boss told me priority 1, and Josh Egley is making sure I keep it that way. But really neat opportunities. Pivoting to some events as we wrap this up, the Water for Food Conference, that's April 10th through 12th over at the Nebraska Innovation Campus. We have our next Huerman lecturer coming in, the former Secretary of Ag for the state of California, that'll be talking to us on the theme of the meeting, local lessons to global impacts, kind of that theme of thinking globally and acting locally. And then another event that I'm still learning about, Burr Fetty. I keep wanting to call it Burr Freddy, but Burr Fetty. Burr Fetty Complex, our 2 residence halls are tired. And in fact, the reason we have a new residence hall is to move our students to an amazing new living learning experience. But Burr Fetty then will be taken down, and we will repurpose that space for the good of the East Campus. There is an event later this June. We have 200 people already registered. Jill Brown, the eternal optimist, is shooting for 1,000 people. Double your goal, Jill. And then kind of wrapping this up before we open the floor up, and we have microphones here, and those of you who are listening online with that 45-second delay, you can text your questions. But this statement, I think, encapsulates my thinking. You know, if we continue to focus on the success of our people, and remember that's all of our people, faculty, staff, students, right, and the communities that we engage locally and globally, by being accessible, equitable, diverse, and inclusive, right? And accessibility is a key part of that. By being an engaged university, by being the 21st century engaged university. What does that mean? What does engaged teaching mean? What does engaged learning, engaged scholarship, what is that? And through authentic partnerships. Again, people make the differences. Candid, honest, win-win, common shared vision types of relationships, then I'm confident that it's not we will make a difference. We will continue to make a difference and amplify and build on the tremendous, tremendous foundation that the 2,000 of you, now I'm 2001, give or take, and I'm blessed to be a part of it, that we will make the impact that we aspire to make. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And sorry for running a little bit long, but I think that's a good meet and greet, and then we can get on with it. Thank you. Jill and Jesse have microphones here.
Mike, Tom Franti with the Department of Biological Systems Engineering.
Hi, Tom.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'd like to ask you about your experience with faculty governance,
Yeah.
interacting with Faculty Senate,
Yep.
and what is your intent to continue that experience here at the University of Nebraska?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, except, Tom, what I learned through the interview process, and I had the good fortune of meeting with the faculty leaders. We had a very, 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 very frank, and I thought candid and positive conversation around faculty governance. So it's a little bit different than what I was used to for the last 21 years. At Ohio State, we had a faculty council, and the faculty council then was the majority of voices on what we call the University Senate. So we had a faculty governance, we had student governance, professional, undergraduate, and graduate, and we had a staff advisory council, and then we had 28 administrators. Collectively, that thing was known as the University Senate. I was a member of the faculty council, and I was a university faculty senator. And so I believe wholeheartedly in the partnership. I think I will just be very frank and very candid. We're all in this boat together, and I absolutely believe that it's critical that we have a healthy dialogue and that faculty have a voice. Faculty and staff. So I want to give a nod to our long-term staff. You are the durable, resilient characteristics or elements of our university. Our students, they come. Our students, they go in 4 to 8 years, depending on their program. Now, alumni are durable, and they're an extension of our students. But it's absolutely critical that we have all voices at the table. I personally hope that we have more of a partnership tone to the dialogue rather than faculty governance, as it sometimes happens at places. I'm not saying it's that way here, but when faculty governance becomes a watchdog of the nasty administration and it becomes so divisive, I think then we really do ourselves a disservice by not tapping the full breadth and scope of the diversity of perspectives and the input that comes. I don't think there's any issue that I would not be open to hearing about. Again, so long as it's done with all the rules of civil discourse and assuming positive intent until the data or the evidence or the artifacts are enough to pivot. That's easy for me saying as the new person because I'm coming into a community that I'm still trying to figure out, and I don't know what the patterns are, but my sense is in talking with our faculty colleagues that it's been pretty healthy. I think another tangible example, Tom, in here that I've been very excited about, I think a lot about total faculty. The tenure track line is a critical line, critical role within the academy. Our professors of practice are also a critical line in our total faculty. And I've been so impressed by the partnerships that I've seen when at the department levels, but also in the faculty governance, that whether you're on campus, whether you're at an REC, whether you're a professor of practice, whether you're a tenure track faculty line, that there is a clear indication that the faculty get the uniqueness of each of their roles and responsibilities, and that it really is a pretty good culture right now. Yes, sir.
I got a question from online.
Okay.
Jessica Burnett, who's in the School of Natural Resources. Jessica asked, at the 2016 INR All Hands, Dr. Green presented the statistics of our faculty diversity over the 2011 to 15 period. Here he presented a 5-year increase in female tenure line faculty. Across INR, the female to male tenure track ratio inches closer to 1. However, these disparities tend to lie dormant at the department level. How can we approach this issue at the department level with INR and institutional level support?
Yeah, that's great. And there's a 45-second delay. So Jessica asked the question from from SNR. Sorry, a slip to a previous bit. I think the numbers that Ron has shared with me, from what I've seen, absolutely that there is positive progress in our gender balance in our faculty. And I think that's great. And I think the picture's worth 1,000 words. I think that's positive. And at Ronnie Green's all hands meeting, that big picture with the 122 new faculty, that was really terrific. I guess the way I'd like to tackle this is 2 things. One, and we're not sugarcoating anything, so we can roll up our sleeves and have honest dialogue. While I think we're making progress on the gender balance within our ranks, and that's going to be critical to continue that progress and then extend that progress to other types of diversity, whether ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, disciplinary, age, all of that comes into play. I think we need to continue to work collectively. The question that I would like to do and the approach I'd like to take is ultimately get the demographic information into the hands of the department heads. So it's great that we've got it rolled up at the university level or the system or IANR. What I'd really like to do is get that into the hands of the departments. And I would like the departments, as I said earlier, to simply ask the question, who's missing? And I'm doing that not with pointing fingers or laying blame or sidestepping real constraints on our system, our national system of higher education and how we train new colleagues. But I really just want you to answer the question for yourself and have the hard conversations locally about who's missing. And then the question that comes with that, the corollary is, so what are we going to do about it? And then my responsibility as the leader of INR and the interface and the leadership team is, what should we then be doing in response to what you'd like to do, and how do we bring resources to bear on that issue? So that's number 1. Number 2, you just go to the INR website and take a look at our leadership team. Our leadership team is white, male dominated. I've already, every chance, Kelly knows this, when I was at West Central, I had the conversation there. Folks, we can't look, our leadership team just can't look like we do today 5 years from now. So the question there for all of us, again, with excellence paramount, is how do we change that? And that's all of our responsibility. And again, it's not diversity for diversity's sake, because I really think that cheapens the conversation. These are meaningful, hard conversations about how do we embody the diversity that we know is critical to moving the Institute forward and helping people succeed. And I'm just one of 2,000 minds in this, so, and I don't know the structures that are in place to have this kind of dialogue. So Jessica, that's my answer. And thanks for asking the question. There's the camera. Jessica, thank you. We're past our time. We have Bert has a question. I know Bert's name.
Is this on? Yeah. How do you foresee the evolution of the relationship between IANR and other colleges at UNL and the other institutions within the University of Nebraska system?
Great, Bert. And I lied. We have 13 minutes, so I don't know whose clock I'm watching. That's a great question, Bert. So his question is my thoughts about how we leverage partnerships not only within UNL, and I'll just paraphrase, the city and the East Campus and the Innovation Campus, but how UNL then partners, how the Institute partners with other institutions, both within the Nebraska university system, but outside of that system. And I think that's a great question. I think it's critical. Lots of ways to go on this. Let me hit the local one first, right? When I was interviewing, I was looking again, I pretended I was an anthropologist or a biological anthropologist, archaeologist, and I was looking for artifacts. And I was looking for artifacts everywhere to make sure that the talk I heard, Bert, was aligned with the action. Everything from, I'll give you two examples, when my wife and daughter and I were quietly on campus while you were watching the ducks get served up, we walked around Philly Hall, we also walked around the Union. The fact that we had a gender-neutral bathroom on the 3rd floor was an artifact about inclusive excellence. The fact that Barb Cooksley was until just recently the president of the Nebraska Cattlemen's Association was an artifact. And those were the kinds of artifacts. Other artifacts that were critically important for me was the establishment of the Rural Futures Institute, the Doherty Food for Water, the fledgling Food for Health, and then the Buffett Early Childhood Program. These were examples of a commitment put in motion. I don't know anything about the genesis or the politics, and I'm sure they were there, but the tangible brass tacks is that across the system of universities within the NU system, there was a commitment to pull the functionality, regardless of which campus it resides, to pull that together to do leveraged or synergistic or collaborative work. That was a huge piece. The Nebraska Innovation Center, the public-private partnerships, the fact that we have the Food Processing Center, that we have the Department of Food Science and Technology that's located on that campus, the fact that we have Beadle Hall that brings together representatives of faculty from quote-unquote colleges on the city campus and the Institute. The fact that we have a Department of Biochemistry that has a home that bridges. There were lots of examples of bridging. Those were just a few. So I was excited by that. I think the integrated beef systems, again, those types of. So I'll say this too to the group, I mean, just philosophically, technical solutions and STEM fields are critical. But technical solutions of and by themselves aren't enough, in my opinion, my humble opinion, to solve the global grand challenges that we face around poverty, around food security, around feeding a global and expanding global world, around climate variability or climate change, depending on your perspective on the world. It really, really has to be partnered with what it means to be human and how humans engage each other and the environment and the world around them. So I don't know how and while we have some departments that focus on the social sciences, I really think we need anthropologists, we need sociologists, we need the College of Business, we need engineering to step in a greater way. And while there are bridges that are already there, my expectation and my hope, and I said this to Ronnie when we chatted, is I was so excited that Ronnie had the opportunity. I'm excited that Ronnie came from this role and did amazing things with you. B, I was glad that he served as a senior vice chancellor for a while. And now that he's our leader, and he had the opportunity to hire 2 chief academic officers at the same time. And that has now materialized itself with Dondi Plowman and Mike Bain. And I will say that I've been on the phone, I visited, Dondi was in Columbus for the Nebraska game. I picked her up at the airport, took her out to lunch, and we began having a dialogue. I was part of her interview team here. I'm very excited about working with Dondi. She's got a lot to learn about being an executive vice chancellor. While I have some experience having been a vice provost for 7 years, I might be able to help her out. I have the huge task of getting to learn a new system and learning Nebraska. I think there's low-hanging fruit for Dondi and Mike as the 2 chief academic officers in partnership with the deans to really think smartly about where we can leverage. I think what Hank Bounds and now Ronnie Green and Jeff Gold, the chancellor up at UNMC, the fact that John Christensen, who's done great things at UNO, but he's pivoting and transitioning, and Doug Christensen over at UNK, and Ron Rosati, there's an opportunity to bring functions together, and central to all of this, I think, especially with our external partners, will be the Innovation Campus. So for me, Bert, there's all kinds of opportunities where I've got a huge gap, and I intend to use this next 6 months while my wife is still in Columbus. I am trying like crazy to learn about the intimate relations that happen at the department level across the university as we try to stimulate. Now, the backside of this is incentivizing a culture of collaboration. And part of that, big part to Tom's point, is making sure that we have the right incentive structures in place such that people are rewarded for the things that we're asking them to do. And so just on a P&T front, do we have the right incentives? Are we thinking broadly about what it means to be successful, from student success to how, to be honest with you, our development officers are rewarded? Are they rewarded for siloed development within units, or are they being rewarded and held up for actually working across the span of the enterprise? It's a multifaceted ecosystem, and that's a pretty high-level question, but I need to explore the details to that, and I intend to do that. Other questions? Thoughts? Things I should know? One of the things I'd like you all to be thinking about, just high level, is what's working? What's working? What should we keep doing? What can we stop doing? That's a fun part, right? What's not working so well? What can we stop doing? And be thinking about those. I'm not going to ask you, but as we're thinking about IANR's future, and as Ronnie's thinking about the university's future, I think we all owe it to each other to really be pretty open about stretching the bounds. You've been here a long time. Many of you, some of you who are new, have a fresh perspective. So we need to know what that is as we move into this dialogue phase later this spring. Okay, I'm not going to stand up here for the last 4 minutes. So with hearing no more questions, I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Go Big Red!